guest is the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, Congressman for Wisconsin's 1st District. Do you recognize that music, Mr. Speaker?
I'm really ashamed to say it, but I don't, and I was just trying to figure it out myself. What is it?
I don't know, but I figured you would. What is it, Claude?
It's Gold on the Ceiling by the Black Keys, just in case.
Oh, my gosh, yeah. Didn't get it.
You're not keeping up, Paul.
It didn't sound like Bill Bennett music.
It's not. They throw me off. How are you, Mr. Speaker?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm okay.
By the way. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm not, the folks are calling in and they're just killing me with their thanks and their gratitude and all this. And I'm not doing justice to them because they're great, as you know, the American people. But, it's been a great, conversation with the American people. There's nothing quite like it, Paul, as you know.
Can I just say one thing, just to go on a little riff? I just want to thank you. You've been a mentor to me since I was 23 years old, teaching me about life, about conservatism, about political philosophy, about how to do the right thing, about how to see around corners, about how to try and get things right, how to stick to your principles, how to try and be an effective conservative. And that's one thing I learned from you and other mentors, which is it's one thing to think conservative things, to try and be a conservative person, to understand and grapple with conservative principles. But it is an entirely different thing to try and put those principles into action, to see the forest through the trees, to try and be effective and be prudent and take incremental steps sometimes and big steps other times, but to be able to affect conservatism and not just yell conservatism, speak conservatism, but to try and make it actually happen and put it into effect in a pluralistic society, a world where liberal progressives often are on the rise, are in the offense, or in the pole position. You, of all people, have taught me that. And I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you.
For what you've done for your listeners and for me personally.
Thank you. Well, my goodness, thank you. We're going to save that's for sure. Thank you, Paul. Yeah, Irving Kristol says the most important political fact to learn once you get interested in politics is that there are other people, and they don't agree with you. I guess you're you're getting some lesson in that, I guess, huh?
I sure have.
Well, let's talk about effective conservatism, Paul, because some things are lost, it seems to me, in the current discussion. I remember you saying to us, and I got a private meeting and then speaking out at Claremont when you got the Churchill Award, we have a few more years to pull this thing out on the budget. Do we still have a few more years? Where are we on that clock?
Yeah, one thing that at that time when I got that award, I didn't realize was going to happen was that Ben Bernanke and now Janet Yellen would be cranking up the monetary policy machine so much that they would, basically put $4 trillion on the credit card, on the monetary bank credit card, which basically bought us a little more time, but making the consequences of the pullout of the, so-called recovery that must happen that much more questionable and difficult. And so, yeah, Bill, I really see, and for the last radio show, I'm going to call you Bill and not Dr. Bennett.
I love it. Oh, I just made a note of that, too.
I really see the next presidency as the make-or-break presidency, and that's why I'm so, worried about where we are. Not just, I'm talking about the presidential election, but just Congress and everything. Because the way I see it is, we start trillion-dollar deficits starting in about 2018 and on. We go from 40 million retirees to 77 million retirees, and far fewer people following them into the workforce, paying the taxes to pay for their benefits. And then comes the debt crisis, and the Federal Reserve will be more or less out of bullets. The kind of budget surgery that will have to be done to stop a debt crisis will require cutting benefits for people in retirement after they've retired in real time, creating absolute social chaos, and we can prevent that from happening. And I do believe, given just the budget trajectory and demographics, that we basically have one more presidency to get it right, to do it in our terms, to fix these budget problems in a prospective way so they don't affect benefits of people in or near retirement, so that promise that was made to them that they organized their lives around still kept. But if we blow another presidency with a Clinton presidency, I don't see that happen. And I see a real ugly road ahead of us, and I see a fiscal situation where we do have a European-like debt crisis, but there's no America to back us up like we back up America militarily and otherwise. And so, yeah, I mean, I think a number of years ago it was looking so bad, but because the rest of the world wasn't as good either, and the Federal Reserve cranked up the monetary policy, I think that bought us a little bit of time. But it didn't fix the problem. It just delayed the inevitable.
I don't mean to be picky here, but next presidency, is that 4 years or 8 years?
You know, no one really knows the economics of these things, but I don't want to risk it for sure.
But it's short term. It's short term. And then I was going to ask you what happens if we don't do it. And you hinted at it. Could you say more European-style crisis?
Yeah, I think a European-style austerity crisis where you're cutting benefits in real time. If it gets so bad, the Federal Reserve will have no choice but to monetize our debt. That's one of the reasons why I'm for monetary policy reform. We passed a bill in the House calling for that. I think you really have to do the kind of budget surgery you need to do, but we can do it well on our terms and make these programs work better for the next generation and keep them intact for the current generation and keep our government limited. Let me put it a different way. For the last 60 years, we have taken 20 cents out of the economy to pay for the federal government. 20 cents of every dollar made effectively in America went for the federal government. By the time my kids are around my age, having their kids, the federal government required 40 cents out of every dollar made in America just to pay for this federal government at that time.
Yeah.
And that's before they get to other issues. And so the limited government, economic freedom, economic growth, the kind we've seen before will not be the kind we see in the future if we stay on this path.
All right. It's really just three questions I want to ask you. The second one then is the politics of this. You said, not with President Clinton. Do we need a Republican president to get this done, as best you can tell, and a Republican House and Senate? I
am convinced the answer is yes to that. I know that sounds pretty, petty and partisan, but the reason why I say that is we tried for a while to get a budget deal with President Obama. Erskine Bowles, a good Democrat, worked hard on it. The progressives are in no interest in doing this. The progressives will not do this, I am convinced. Why? Because the status quo gets us to a really big government. The status quo gets us to government equalizing the results of people's lives. The status quo gets us to a much, much larger government, and then the inevitable will be to raise taxes on everybody. And I think progressives are okay with that. I think that's kind of part of their idea. So I do believe you need a Republican president that is willing to do this kind of heavy lifting. And by the way, if we do it now, it's not heavy lifting. It's actually the kind of reform that gets us faster economic growth, more opportunity, and intact promises kept to our nation's seniors. But I do think it takes a Republican president because I do not think, because the liberals, the progressives control their party, Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders are two peas of the same pod. I just think that there's no way that they're willing to do that. They don't want to keep government limited. They want it to be unlimited.
Quick question. You're going to be chairman of the convention. You kept your powder dry, which I think is wise. About the candidates, I know people have tried to draw you in to make comments about one or another. I guess you voted, haven't you, or will vote?
I have.
In Wisconsin.
Yeah, no, I voted absentee. I'm going to be overseas on a mission in the Middle East, meeting with our allies who need some bucking up. So I'm going to be gone, and so I have voted, but I'm not going to tell you how I voted. I'm going to keep my powder dry because, as chairman of the convention, I really do believe that I need to be a referee just calling the balls and the strikes and a dispassionate, neutral observer. So I'm not going to mention who I voted for in Wisconsin. Our primary's next Tuesday, and I'm just, I'm going to speak out on issues. When I see things that need commenting on a case-by-case basis, I'll do that to defend conservatism as I best understand it and know it. But as far as candidates themselves, I'm going to keep my powder dry because I think that's the role I have to play as chairman of the convention.
Final thing, not a lot of time, but we read this morning, it's as good a place as any, from 2001 to 6, annual average of 2,500 terror fatalities. In 2012, 2013, it went to 9,000 terror fatalities. Right now, I didn't know this, Paul, the death toll on average from terror every year is just 28,700 per year. We are not destroying and degrading terrorism.
We are not, and homegrown jihadism is the newest wave. We had a guy try to shoot up the Masonic Temple in Milwaukee a couple months ago. We caught a homegrown inspired jihadist. We are not doing what we need to do to get ISIS. The president, we required in law, deliver a plan to Congress to defeat ISIS. He was a couple of months late in delivering that plan. He just gave it to us a couple of days ago. And I guess you could say that that's a good thing that he finally gave us a plan. But what was more disheartening and just shocking about it was just a recitation of the status quo of what they're doing, which is even more disturbing to me because it shows me that they are just phoning it in on the war on terror. They're phoning it in
Yep.
on radical Islamic terrorism, and they're not doing anything near what we need to do. That's one of the reasons why I'm going over to the Middle East to talk with our allies
Good.
who are combating this.
All right. Well, we're counting on the future, and you're a large part of that future. And let me say on the radio, I am so proud of the man you have become and the leader you have become. Thank you.
Thanks for all you do, Dr. Bennett. Appreciate
You
it.
bet. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Paul Ryan.